p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Central, as Eco America announces the winner and the runner-up, awarding over $200,000 in prize money. To watch live, just go to ecoamerica.org to register and attend the online ceremony. That's ecoamerica.org. Don't miss the presentation of the American Climate Leadership Awards 2025, Wednesday, April 16th, and wish us luck. Caring about the climate, caring about the community, changing the conversation. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we've got your black.
I'm Tavis, Smiley, and I'm delighted to have you with us in this hour. As I said earlier in today's program, I've been excited, looking forward to this conversation with our guest. Let me just share with you that she's in studio, so if you want to turn us on and see her, you can. As with every guest, we, in studio at least, we ask them what their walk-on song is. And our guest in this hour, the author, Dolan Perkins Valdez, has chosen this track as her walk-on. Tell us what we're listening to and why you chose it as your walk-on.
I chose Etta Baker's Railroad Bill. Etta Baker was a North Carolina Piedmont country blues guitarist. And while I was working on this book, which is set in rural North Carolina, western North Carolina, the hills of Appalachia, I was listening to a lot of Etta Baker, and she was just a beautiful spirit and a beautiful soul.
Yeah. It is soothing.
It is.
Let it ride for a second, Miles. In this hour, a conversation about the book that everybody, or as we say in my neighborhood, everybody's talking about this book. It's called Happy Land. Let me try to set it up as best I can, and then I will yield to the author to take us through this hour. In the late 1800s, a caravan of formerly enslaved men and women create their own secret community hidden in the aforementioned Appalachian Mountains. After walking hundreds of miles, they claim a 200-acre territory and, dreaming of African dynasties, create a self-sustaining kingdom ruled by a king and queen. And then one day, the revolutionary kingdom suddenly vanishes. The book Happy Land is the true story of this black kingdom, and its author, Dolan Perkins Valdez, is in our studio today, and I'm delighted to welcome her to this program. I should have started by asking, but we jump right into the song. How are you? It's nice to see you.
It's nice to see you, too. Nice to be in Los Angeles.
Good to have you in L.A., and I'm glad to have you in studio. I mean that sincerely. I've been trying to figure out where I want to start this conversation, and I think I want to start with this. I'm always fascinated by stories that I've never heard of, and how somebody else heard about it and I didn't, right? So I'm curious as to how this even came into your purview. Before we get into the story, tell me how this came into your purview.
Well, it actually goes back to the music. Mm-hmm. During the pandemic, my pandemic hobby was learning the banjo. Mm-hmm. And I was real interested in black banjo players and the African roots of the banjo. Right. And a lot of really wonderful black banjo players came out of North Carolina. or the Carolinas. And I was just looking for musicians in that Western North Carolina area and stumbled on an old newspaper article about this kingdom. And when you find something like this, you don't think it's a book. You just you're just being curious, and that's how all my books come about. Just me being a normal human being. And when I read this article, I said, "Is this true?" I wondered. I didn't know if it was true or not. And I reached out to a local librarian and oral storyteller in Hendersonville, North Carolina, Ronnie Pepper. And Ronnie got on the phone with me, and he said it was true.
And then you thought what?
And then I thought, wait a minute. Has anybody written about this thing before? Because you always have to check that. And nobody had written about it. And I booked a flight.
Yeah. Just that quickly. What was it about the story? And this audience, of course, is going to hear about the story as we move through this hour. I've sort of set the frame for us. But what was it as a writer? And obviously this is historical fiction. But what was it as a writer about this story that grabbed you?
What really grabbed me about it was the audacity. You're talking about 1873. We're still in the middle of Reconstruction. They leave South Carolina, they go up this mountain, and they establish this community. They pool together their money and their profits. They purchase over 200 acres of land. And half of it was on the South Carolina side, half of it was on the North Carolina side. And they just decide they're going to check out and create their own community. Before they got up here, they were voting, and they had been prosecuted for it. One of them had been publicly whipped, partially because he was voting and encouraging other black men to vote, but also he was making money on his farm, and he was making more money, I think, than a lot of the white farmers. And so they had been driven out, and they went up there, and they just said, we're going to do our own thing. And I was just, I don't know, I was astounded by the audacity of that.
Yeah, I love that word, audacity. That's exactly what this story is all about. I say all the time on this program, the audience hears me say it perennially, that I leave this studio every day smarter than when I came in. And all of us are going to be a little smarter in about 50 minutes from now when you hear the story of this Black Kingdom, courtesy of the author, Dolan Perkins Valdez. The book is called Happy Land, a novel. You're going to listen to her unpack this for us when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Interrogating and unpacking.
That's what we do around here.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Progressive knows owning a home can be hard, but not always. Like when you're relaxing on your patio, enjoying a nice, quiet evening. So quiet. Except for the sound of the neighbor's party. Which you said you'd go to if you weren't busy. And your quiet night on the patio, that's not exactly busy, is it? Maybe you should just stay inside. At least Progressive's Home Quote Explorer lets you easily compare rates, so shopping for insurance is the easiest part of owning a home. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and third-party insurers. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number 536994.
A new day is on the horizon.
Who paved the way for the leaders of today? An untold number of remarkable women, known and unknown, who shaped our past and continue to inspire our future in every field of human endeavor, education, civil rights, technology, and more. Celebrating Women's History Month, we are KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey, this is Zoe Williams, the voice of reason, and for over 20 years, Parkside Economic Development Corporation has served Leimert Park and surrounding communities, empowering tomorrow's leaders and changing lives. Parkside EDC has awarded over $400,000 in college scholarships while sharing economic principles of the Big Five of money with students and their families. Parkside EDC partners with organizations like the Brotherhood Crusade to assure our youth have the financial acumen to succeed. Parkside EDC provides families and businesses with financial insights, offering free online, on-site, and on-air B-Warp presentations. The Black Wealth Attainment and Retention Programs helps our community acquire, sustain, and pass down legacy wealth. High school seniors can apply for this year's scholarship awards at parksideedc.org. Scholarships will be awarded at Parkside EDC's Gospel/Jazz Brunch on Sunday, April the 27th. For details, tickets, or donations, please visit parksideedc.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Dolan Perkins Valdez, who is the author of the book that everybody's talking about, the new novel called Happy Land. It is historical fiction. You used the word earlier. I want to just make the most of the time we have, and I'm glad, again, to have you in studio. That word audacity jumped out at me, because when one gets into this story, Happy Land, they will see that word is most applicable to the story of these people. But when you reach for that word audacity, why that word?
Well, think about it. They've only been freed people for a few years when they trek up that mountain in 1873, right? Emancipation was 1865, and people were still rebuilding their lives. And, I found evidence that they didn't just leave because it was a nice and bright sunny day. They were forced out of South Carolina. The KKK had been running wild there. We'd had the KKK trials of 1871 and 1872. But after those trials, things didn't get better. They went back to being bad again. Black men were voting, but there was still a lot of jealousy around that. South Carolina had elected a black man to statewide position. I think the Secretary of State, or I forget what the title was, had been elected. Big position in South Carolina, and white people were jealous. So I know that they were driven out because there was evidence in the archive that they sold everything in a rush for cheaper than it was worth. A hog was sold.
Fire sale,
right?
Yeah.
A hog was sold for $1 and the hog was worth $3. And they sold their land. They sold everything pretty much overnight and then left. So that told me that they were running for their lives, basically. And they got up there and they decided that they were going to establish their own community. They began working not only in the areas around there with all the skills that they brought. We know that enslaved people had a lot of skilled labor. It wasn't low-skilled labor, right? There was a reason why an enslaved man was worth today's equivalent of $50,000, right? Because it was skilled labor. And so they got jobs around there. They helped lay the railroad, the Saluda Great Railroad. They farmed. They worked in the mines. They did a lot of different things, and then they pooled their resources together and saved their money. And they were flourishing for a time. And they decided they weren't going to vote anymore, I believe, because I couldn't find them on any voter records once they got up there. And they just decided they were going to have their own government, their own community, their own council. And that says a lot about who they were as people and what they desired.
Yeah. Audacity. It fits. Before I again jump more deeply into the story, you mentioned these Klan trials. You ran right past it, but I want to go back to it just for a second.
Sure.
Just say a word for those persons who are not familiar with these Klan trials, what they were about. Just set the stage for that, if you will.
So in South Carolina, as we know, after the Civil War ended, the Klan rose up as a way of keeping black people from prospering. It was always a fear of black economic prosperity, which was connected to franchisement. So when black men got the right to vote by constitutional amendment, the Klan rose up to keep them down. And also when black men had the ability to own land and farm and gain a profit, the Klan was a response to that too. So the Klan was particularly vicious in South Carolina, and what we're talking about right now is Spartanburg County, South Carolina. And the federal government, this was Reconstruction era, was, establishing the Freedmen's Bureau and doing everything they could to help freed people get on their feet. And they prosecuted the Klan. And anyone, all of these records are public. You can go online and look up 1871, 1872 KKK trials of South Carolina. And there's testimony, there's eyewitness accounts, etc. And they came in and prosecuted them for 2 years. And some of them were, found culpable of this violence. But then the trials ended. And of course, eventually, Reconstruction ends with the Hayes-Tilden Compromise in 1876. So when that happened, the federal troops were pulled out of the South when Reconstruction ended, and black people were once again terrorized. So what we're talking about is an era of extreme racial terrorism. I often think about what kind of stress people must have had to live under to even just go about your day, what kind of stress they had to live under. And so they got together as a community and they did things to help them survive it, not only to help them survive it sort of physically in their lives, but mentally.
When you hear that part of the story, that's why I asked that question. You understand, not that this audience needs to be convinced of this, you understand why they wanted to get away.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to establish with that question, why they wanted to get away.
Now, I will say to that, Tavis, that for a long time, it was believed that they left just because they wanted to start a new life. And that was because there was this pamphlet published by this white woman, local historian in North Carolina, published in 1857, where she stated that they left just to start a new life because, the South was in economic ruin. But it was my research, my archival research.
They were coerced.
They were pushed out. They fled.
We've used the word they more times than I can count in this conversation. I want to unpack the they. So let me just back this thing down and ask you, we are already now tapped into what their exploits were. We'll come back to that and what they built. But tell me more about these people. Tell me about who the they is that we're talking about in this conversation.
It's interesting. They were remarkable. They were mostly from a little town in South Carolina called Cross Anchor. And if anybody's ever, I doubt anybody listening has ever been to Cross Anchor. Like literally, I went down there and there was a flashing four-way stop.
Right.
And then I went through the four-way stop and then I turned around and I was like, I think that was Cross Anchor.
That was it. It reminds me of my father, quick story here. My father's from a place called Midway. It took me years of research to figure out why it was called Midway. It was literally midway between two real
towns.
Cities. Exactly. You if you blink, you missed it. So it was called Midway, Georgia. I digress. Continue on.
No, that's true. That's true. But This is the fun of doing this research. You get down here and you meet people and you see little towns that barely exist on a map.
Yeah.
But I did find an old map that showed these farm boundaries, these large farms owned by white folks where enslaved people lived. So, all of this stuff y'all can find in the archives. This is why it's important for us as, black folks to do our family history.
That's right.
Because, it's not a non-existent. It's hard to find, but there's things there that we can follow. So they were from this Cross Anchor, Glen Springs, which is another little town next to it. And they, my understanding is that many of them belong to this church led by a man named Martin Bobo. And I'm talking about the original Kingdom Dwellers. Eventually more people will join them, but the original ones belong to this church. And at this time, people were scared of black people having their own churches. They wanted black folks to be in the back rows and in the balconies of white churches so that white ministers could control their religion. And if you controlled their religion, you controlled a lot of things, their subservience, their belief in white supremacy, etc. So to have a black church was considered an affront. And I do believe that Martin Bobo was encouraging his members to vote. He's the one that we have a record of being publicly whipped and another man who went to his church is also on that list. I do believe he was encouraging them to vote. I do believe that his church was not just a place for spiritual worship, but also a place for political organizing, as so many were. I mean, that line, even today, we know in the Black church, even though we know we're nonprofit, status, we still do a lot of organizing in our community organizing, put it that way, in our churches. But he was doing that, and these people, like I said, they owned cattle, they owned hogs. I wouldn't say they were prosperous, but they were prospering. You understand what I'm saying?
I got you. I hear the difference.
Yes.
Yeah. Tell me then about, since we established already that they didn't just leave of their own free will, they were coerced out, they were forced out. Let's go to that part of the story, the forcing out of this land.
So it's interesting. Sometimes you find these things in the archives and you think, I'm so glad I found this, because if this got in the hands of the wrong person, they could spin it into something. Because we're putting puzzle pieces together, right? Like, these are all little puzzle pieces that we put together. And when I found this, I honestly thought, I'm not going to share this with anybody for now. But what I found was there had been this article published about the members of Martin Bobo's church saying that they were cannibals. And the article said that they had taken this elderly black woman hostage and that they planned to eat her, and that they were a bunch of savages, etc. And the article had gone the 19th century version of viral, meaning it had been reprinted in newspapers all across the U.S. and in Canada. And it was all these headlines. There was a small article, but it went viral. And the article said, group of cannibals led by, nefarious pastor, I forget what the words were, has a practice of cannibalism. And I believe those articles were one of the primary reasons why folks left. Because these vicious rumors were being spread about them. And I believe it was tied to the fact that they were making money. I think, I found in the record that Martin Bobo had made something like over $800 in 1 year from his farm, and that was a good amount. That was more, when you look at the records, than some of the neighboring white farmers were making in a year. He had a congregation. He was getting too powerful. And it wasn't just him; it was the entire little community there in the Cross Anchor area. And but when I saw just newspaper article after newspaper article after about these cannibals in this tiny little town, I thought, this was the sort of viciousness of racism in the 1870s, that something like that was something people wanted to read about.
Let me just ask you this question, because you've laid so heavily on this. I want to just probe it a little bit more. And you've written, obviously, a number of best-selling books, and this one, Happy Land, is the latest. But what's your sense of, I want to phrase this the right way, what is your sense of jealousy and envy as a character in the story of the way that we have been maltreated? I mean, there are all kinds of, we can unpack this for hours if I had the time, but I'm specifically just focusing on this notion of jealousy and envy as a way to impugn, as a way to put upon, as a way to disenfranchise black people, because that's part of the story here.
It is, but it feels like sometimes it's erased. Like when you hear people talk about, there's a sort of chatter out there of people who don't want to read stories about enslaved people, right? Or they don't want to read sort of like stories of black trauma. And I get it, right? We all need certain stories at certain point. Like when I'm on vacation, I want to read something light too. I understand that. But I also think that what is problematic in talking about a story of so-called black trauma is that, and I've always said this, that the trauma is really not ours. Yeah. It's theirs. Like, the people who oppress you.
That's a deep point. Those
are the people who have trauma, right? That's the reason they oppress.
Wow.
It's actually a story of white trauma. Do you understand? So what I'm saying is,
you're getting deep, Dolan. You're getting deep.
Too much. It's too early. I need more coffee.
No, go ahead.
But what So when we think about jealousy and envy, we're talking about white trauma. And that's always at the root of any story of Black history.
Yeah.
And the way you do that when you write a story like this is, I didn't focus so much on our suffering. I focused more on our resilience. I focused more on, well, what did they do in response to white trauma? They built this community. They started to manufacture a product called Happy Land Liniment, which became hugely popular in North Carolina because people had a lot of aches and pains, right? And it was a liniment that worked. They they educated the children so that the children would be literate. They created other types of things like sewing and they had shoemakers and cobblers. So I tried to focus on what were the things that these folks did in this community in response to white trauma? Yeah. And even if we are looking at pain and suffering, because there are moments in the book where everything is not all roses. Sure. But even in those moments, it is a response to white trauma.
Yeah. See, I wanted to lay on that just for a second because my sense is that we use this phrase white supremacy so much that the phrase itself obscures us from talking about things like jealousy and envy.
That's right.
It's not just that they think they have thought, and I don't mean to impugn or all white people, but it's not just that they have thought that they are superior or that they are entitled, that they are better than, et cetera, et cetera. At a very base level, so much of our history has been driven by notions of jealousy and envy. And so this story of Happy Land just sort of reminded me of the ways that we have been put upon throughout history because of those things. I digress on that for now, but thank you for speaking to that. The book is called Happy Land, a novel. The author is the New York Times best-selling author of Take My Hand, Dolan Perkins Valdez. More with her when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
For all the freedom-loving folk, this is Tavis Smiley.
I feel like freedom.
Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like, to check you have a full tank of gas first before road tripping through the desert.
Empty? Seriously? Maybe I can walk.
Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds.
Maybe I can't.
You're in good hands with Allstate.
Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
I'm Bree Wood with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. The Trump administration is rolling back over 24 pollution regulations, claiming it will boost the economy. EPA Chief Lee Zeldin stated this will lower costs for heating homes, buying cars, and running businesses. A strong storm system is hitting the West Coast, threatening wildfire areas in Los Angeles. The storms will move east, bringing severe weather and blizzard conditions to the central U.S., south, and east over the weekend. Family and friends are remembering singer and former Cook County Commissioner Jerry Butler, known as the Iceman. His funeral was held Wednesday in Chicago. Butler, known for hits like Only the Strong Survive, served as the commissioner for over 30 years. He was 85. And researchers in the UK and Ireland warn against giving slushies with glycerol to children under the age of 8. Glycerol, used to prevent freezing, caused 21 emergency cases in kids ages 2 to 7, including nausea and loss of consciousness. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Every day, a child in poverty waits for a sponsor is another day of hopelessness. There are thousands of kids who've been waiting over a year. End their wait. Sponsor a child with compassion today. Just text the word radio to 83393.
The CONCACAF Nations League finals arrive at SoFi Stadium March 20th through the 23rd. USA versus Panama, followed by Canada versus Mexico. Get your tickets now on Ticketmaster. For more information, visit CONCACAFNationsLeague.com/tickets.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers sent LeBron back to L.A. for further treatment on his groin injury. The decision was made in the middle of the Lakers' 4-game road trip. The Lakers are in Milwaukee tonight and at Denver on Friday. LeBron is expected to miss at least the next 2 weeks. The Clippers found some new offense Wednesday night in Miami. Bogdan Bogdanović dropped 30 points in the Clippers' 1 119-104 win over the Heat. It was also a good night for Ivica Zubac, 26 points and 14 rebounds. The Clippers are in Atlanta Friday night. The Rams made it official. They released wide receiver Cooper Kupp. Kupp played his first 8 NFL seasons with the Rams. He was the Super Bowl MVP in 2021 when the Rams beat Cincinnati to win the championship. Tough decision to say goodbye to such a productive player, but the Rams need some salary cap space. Kupp's departure saves the Rams $15 million. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
On January 7th, 2025, the Eaton Canyon Fire scorched Altadena, torching everything in its path. Homes, wealth, and legacy burned in one night. But will Altadena rise from the ashes? I'm James Farr. On The Conversation Live, Altadena Rising, we're chronicling the recovery, the resilience, and justice for the nation. This is the show of record, unapologetically progressive. We're not blacking down. So join me, James Farr, on The Conversation Live, Altadena Rising, every Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific with the rebroadcast on Sunday at noon.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know? The United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time. Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
Made fresh daily in the Mert Park,
Los Angeles, California.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
So, Dolan, you see what I did there?
Yes.
How do rumors get started? Started by the jealous people. I like being cutesy, sometimes too much. In case you've just tuned in, our guest is Dolan Perkins Valdez. Her book is called Happy Land. It's the amazing story of the kingdom of Appalachia. These black folk who were forced out and started their own thing. I could have played Heavy D. We got our own thing. We got our own thing. Maybe we'll play that later. Maybe you got that, Miles? We'll do that a little bit later. Heavy D. I ain't heard no Heavy D in a minute. I love Heavy D. But we were talking earlier. At least Dolan was talking earlier about this vicious rumor that got started about these black folk as cannibals.
Yes.
And how that in part, how that is part of the story of their being forced out and into their own space. Let me just go right to that. I'm watching my time. It's getting away from me. I could do this. I can tell you're such a great storyteller. I enjoy talking to you. We can do this for hours, but I ain't got hours. I got another 25 minutes here. So let me push us toward that part of the story where they are, in fact, these people, these black people, these brilliant black people, these creative black people, these genius black people are forced out, and they find their way to this new space. Pick up the story there.
So yes, they find their way to this new space, and immediately they begin to negotiate, and they begin to figure out how they're going to settle. So they go to this inn called the Oakland Inn, and they strike up a conversation with this white woman by the name of Sarepta Davis. Her husband had died. He had been in the Confederacy, but he didn't die because of the war. But she was left with this property that had formerly been a plantation, and all of the quarters were still there, but the land had, sort of gone to waste. She had no more cattle or livestock, nothing like that. And they made a deal with her that they would help her, and they would also help with the inn in return for lodging and being able to settle in those old quarters on the land. That was how they originally settled on Happy Land. And she agreed. And
Why is it, for those who are curious, why is it called Happy Land?
That's what they named it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why they named it Happy Land, other than, there was a huge there were black intentional communities. Y'all can find this if you Google. There were other black intentional communities. There was one in Tennessee that was huge. They had over 1,000 people, called Promised Land. So I think when they named these places, it embodied their dreams. There was one in Kentucky called the Coe Ridge Colony that was also very well known, but that was just named after the place, the location. Yeah. So I think that it was their happy place.
I love it.
I
love it.
So they made this deal with her, and they settled, and eventually they go back to her and ask her and her son. Her son was also there, and they negotiate to purchase it from her. And they, I think they paid. I want to say they paid $200. I can't remember exactly how much they paid, but it was a fair price that they negotiated. And they put half of the property in Robert Montgomery's name, who was at that time the king of the kingdom, and half of it in Luella Montgomery, who was the queen. And I thought that was interesting, that a black woman, was a property owner, and she had 100 acres under her name, and he had 100 acres under his. And then they went back, and everybody was very excited about the fact that they were really, at this point, autonomous.
Yeah. To your earlier point, there were other intentional black communities, but not all with kings and queens.
That's right. This is what's so unique.
That's where I want to get to. Tell me how they settled on king and queen.
We don't know exactly why they did that,
Right.
other than, I haven't found any, I've looked really extensively at the Montgomery brothers who helped to lead this expedition. I know that William Montgomery had been employed to go up and down that turnpike as a drover, and so he knew about that inn up there, but I don't know, I didn't find any kind of connection between him and any kind of direct African lineage, right? I think it was an active imagination. And I was talking to somebody, somebody mentioned the word monarchist, which in a real contemporary sense can have a bit of a derogatory meaning, right? Particularly when people think about it in the European context.
Absolutely.
But
that's why I'm an anti-monarchist, but
yes,
continue,
yes.
please. Yeah.
Even if we look at, ancient Egypt monarchs, they weren't necessarily a good thing. But I just always say, remember that a monarchy is something made up. It's not anything that comes from God.
That's right.
Okay, I know I'm stepping on some toes of some monarchists out there.
Keep on going.
But it's not a sort of divinely ordained lineage. It is something that man made up. And so I think, like every other monarchy in the history of mankind, this one was made up. I think it was closer to what we might now consider a constitutional monarchy rather than an absolute monarchy. So they had a council that advised the king and queen, and that's in my book. And so the people had a say. It wasn't something where the king and queen absolutely ruled. I think it was more aspirational, that they were creating something that would remind them of home.
Yeah. I was smiling, as you saw when you were getting into your commentary about the monarchies. I was literally in conversation with some people a couple of days ago, a group of people, some of them may be listening right now. And I was making the point that you made a moment ago about how we as black folk have to be intentional.
Yes.
We have to be intentional. And that's the only way that I know to live, is to be intentional about my hopes, my dreams, my aspirations. And I was just making the point, and I just grabbed for a couple of things out of the ether, and I went to Alfred Nobel of the Nobel Prize. He was intentional.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to create a prize, put my name on it, put some money behind it, and make it the most coveted prize in the world. He created it. I was talking about the MacArthur Genius Grants. The MacArthur family decided we're going to put our name on this, and we're going to make it what it is. The royal family decided, somebody one day decided we're going to be the royal family. Mm-hmm. And they just fiated that into existence.
Absolutely.
And we're going to be the royal family. Y'all going to be our subjects. So get in line. And all these years later, we still have the royal family. You're right. It is not divine. God did not institute this. Somebody decided. They were intentional. This is what we are going to do. My point to these Negroes the other day was, if it worked for them, it can work for us. You just have to be intentional about what you plan to do and make it happen. But history is just littered with examples, of in every field of human endeavor where people were just intentional and they made it happen. So anyway, I digress on that point. But go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was going to say about that. Somebody asked me recently, well, what can we do today that is as audacious as what the Kingdom Dwellers did? Like, how does this story, how does it replicate itself in contemporary moment for Black folks?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I don't think that we are going to necessarily self-segregate in one community in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
We all have to live our lives and work our jobs. And
Any,
our kids have
any,
to go to
any
school.
More than we're already segregated.
Yeah, we're pretty segregated.
But I digress. Go ahead.
We're not going to create a nation within a nation.
Right.
I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't know. Who knows? But I think one way has to do with how they thought about their economy.
Mm-hmm.
They pool their resources together to create something. And I think that is something that we can do now. And we've shown it with our selective boycotting, with the ways in which we think about our consumer dollars. There are a lot of ways that we have more power than we think, right? Whether it be how we spend our money or what we watch on TV, right? What we're doing even now on social media, and I say this again, anecdotal, at the risk of stepping on toes, but Twitter wouldn't have been Twitter without Black folks.
Mm-hmm.
Now Threads is becoming more, I see recently how Black folks have been responding to Meghan Markle's show. That's a whole movement happening to support her. And so I think one way that we can think about our modern day happy land, and what you were just talking about, intention and how people can just create something out of nothing. We have more power than we think. I'm here to promote a book by buying Black books.
Yeah.
The publishing world will respond to that. Even if you don't get to read it yet, you buy the Black book, and more Black books, more of these stories will be published and will come out.
I'm glad you went to that, because I just scribbled a note here a moment ago that I want to get to, and we will when we come forward here in just a moment. This notion of pooling their resources, this Black kingdom, this kingdom of Appalachia, they pooled their resources. I want to talk more expressly about the impact, the result of their having pooled their resources. You're listening to the author of Happy Land, Dolan Perkins Valdez, right now, and I'm glad about it, on Tavis Smiley.
From Lamert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
This is an ad by BetterHelp. Think about your mentors and idols, the people who inspire you the most. While it may look like they have all the answers, they don't. But they do know when to ask questions and seek the support they need. In a world that glorifies hyper-independence, it's easy to forget that we're all better with a support system. Therapy is a great way to find a consistent source of support in your life, so you can break free from the outdated belief that seeking help is a sign of weakness. BetterHelp has experienced therapists ready to help you with challenges ranging from anxiety and depression to relationships and stress. It's convenient, too. You can join a session with the click of a button, helping you fit therapy into your busy life. You can even send your therapist a message anytime something comes up. Build your support system with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/ABCRadio today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/ABCRadio.
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well-trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement. Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. LA County's new Justice Care and Opportunities Department, or JCOD, is here to support justice-involved individuals and their families. The JCOD Support Center is now taking calls at 1-833-LACJCOD. That's 1-833-522-5263. Available 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., the Support Center is your one-stop shop for re-entry issues and court support. They offer court reminders, connections to local services, transportation assistance for housing, court appearances, and childcare. The JCOD hotline provides personalized help to connect you with services that you need. And don't forget to check out justiceconnect.org for more information. Remember, it's free and available every day at 1-833-522-5263. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Let's get back to more of this rich dialogue with Tavis Smiley.
I guess this means that my boy Miles does listen to me sometime. I love Heavy D. I miss Heavy D. But we got our own thing. That's what this story is really all about. It's called Happy Land. The author, Nolan Perkins Valdez, is our guest in studio. It's about this story you've never heard of these black people who bought their own land, named it Happy Land. It's the true story of the kingdom of Appalachia. They anointed a king and a queen and did their own thing. In part because they were forced out of where they were, born of jealousy and envy, all the stuff you've missed if you've missed the last 50 minutes of this conversation. Fortunately, every one of these conversations, as you know, becomes a podcast. So by tomorrow, you can go to any of my platforms, or for that matter, any place where you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere. Every day this is the case. You can listen to the podcast of what you may have missed the day before. And this has been an amazing conversation with Dolan. So if you missed any part of it, check out the podcast tomorrow. Watching my time getting away from me, we were talking earlier about how these black people in this kingdom of Appalachia pooled their resources. The impact, the result of that is what? Or was what?
Well, they were able to buy the property. They had, well, let's just say this. In the book, I change a little bit of what happened with the land eventually. In real life, they held on to that land through 1919. Right. Eventually, it was sold in 1919. We believe. Now, the deeds get a little murky around that time. But it wasn't stolen from them. People eventually, it disintegrated because people just went off to do other things. As all younger generations do, they wanted to do something different. They didn't necessarily want to live on the top of that mountain. Yeah. So they did create economic prosperity for a time. And they also, it launched the ones who were there to do the things that they wanted to do. And there are kingdom descendants now who I've talked to who are quite successful. Like, I don't know if it's because of the kingdom or not, but the kingdom descendants I've talked to are very successful people.
Yeah, their land, thankfully, was not stolen from them. But you and I were just talking a moment ago in the break. There's a lot of land loss, a lot of black land loss. As a matter of fact, there's a new project called the Black Land Loss Project. My friend George Fothery, excuse me 1 second here. Excuse me, my friend George Fothery III, brilliant attorney who got Bruce's Beach, got the land back for the Bruce family. He's behind this Black Land Loss Project, so we'll say a word about that when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Helping to stretch your moral and political imagination. This is Tavis Smiley.
Robinhood Gold members can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on annual retirement contributions. With Robinhood Gold, the perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive a 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold $5 a month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Robinhood Financial LLC member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
You know where you want to go in life, and City National Bank can help. City National knows the dedication it takes to build your vision for the future into a reality, and our team is here for you. We have a wide range of options to help, from personal savings accounts to interest-bearing money market savings accounts and more, all designed to help you get where you want to go. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Learn more at cnb.com. City National Bank is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada, member FDIC.
Lena Bloom for the Bail Project.
Imagine you're stuck in a jail cell and you can't afford bail, and someone offers you a way out. Just plead guilty and you can go home and kiss your kids goodnight. What do? What thousands have. You plead guilty whether you are or not. Cash bail makes poverty a crime. That's why the Bail Project helps those who can't afford it while fighting to end cash bail, because freedom should be free.
Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Oh, could this vintage store be any cuter?
Right? And the best part? They accept Discover.
Accept Discover? In a little place like this? I don't think so, Jennifer.
Oh, yeah, huh? Discover's accepted where I like to shop. Come on, baby, get with the times.
Right, so we shouldn't get the parachute pants?
These are making a comeback. I think.
Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide, based on the February 2024 Nielsen report.
Sometimes he fails at fitting in,
but we're okay with that.
You're inside the Tavis Smiley Show.
Our remaining moments here for the next 4 minutes in this hour with Dolan Perkins Valdez. Her book is called Happy Land. If the name rings a bell, some of you obviously fans of her work. Many of you, millions of you, are fans of her work. That's how you get on the New York Times bestseller list perennially. But her 2022 book, Take My Hand, was a New York Times bestselling book, an Oprah Book Club pick, a Target Book Club pick. Earned her, of course, the NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Fiction. So she's been at this for a while. My sense is, reading your stuff, that you like this lane of historical fiction.
I do.
Yeah. Why?
I love the research.
Yeah. And see, I don't have the patience for it, but you do.
I love it.
And piecing the puzzle together.
Yes.
Yeah. As a kid, I hated the puzzle. I didn't have the patience I couldn't find this piece. I would get mad, and I couldn't take it. Yeah. But
I love following my instincts of where it leads me. It feels very much like why I'm here on the planet.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier this Black Land Loss Project that George Fothery III is behind. You can Google it. He's a guest on this program. I think in the next week or so, George is coming in studio to spend an hour. He's the guy, again, that got the land back for Bruce's Beach. But I talk to George all the time. And he started this project in part because every day, literally every day, some new family, or families, plural, are reaching out to him about the theft, the loss of their land. That didn't happen to the folk at Happy Land, but it's an issue that is as real as rain.
Yes. Now, in real life, it didn't happen to the folks at Happy Land, But in my book,
historical
yeah,
fiction.
it is fiction. It's
Yeah,
fiction.
yeah.
I'll say this: when I wrote this book, I had to ask. When this is what I do. When I'm not a historian. Well, okay. Let me put it this way: I'm a historian and a storyteller, but I'm not just trying to tell the historical story. I'm also asking, what do I have to say about this? And I think what I had to say had to do with, what did it mean to own land? Why were black folks so devastated by the federal government's promise or broken promise of 40 acres and a mule?
That's right.
My daddy, I grew up in Memphis, would always talk about his 40 acres. He'd go in our backyard, y'all, and he'd say, I'm going on the back 40. And we like, Daddy, it's a little yard. And he called when he would go out there to cut the grass, he would say, I got to go cut the back 40.
The back 40, yeah.
And I wondered, what did it mean? And when we think about the billions of dollars of property loss from black Americans over the 20th century, and I can't wait for you to do that show. I'm going to listen in. It was obviously, first and foremost, the loss of our wealth, right? It is, in my opinion, the primary reason we're still disproportionately in poverty in this country.
No question.
But it meant more than that, too. It meant community. It meant connecting with our family, gathering together. It meant connecting with nature. It meant we lost, by moving into these urban areas, we lost our connection to birds and the natural world. And then with national parks, black folks didn't necessarily feel welcome there either. So what I was trying to say with this book is, land matters in a lot of ways.
You weren't trying to say it. You said it, and you said it quite beautifully and poignantly. Happy Land is the dazzling true story of the kingdom of the Happy Land in 19th century Appalachia, finally told. As I say at the top of this hour, I love just learning stuff that I was unaware of. So now I know about this kingdom. I know about Happy Land, courtesy of this book, Happy Land, by the New York Times bestselling author of Take My Hand, Dolan Perkins Valdez, who I've delighted in having in studio. I knew this would be a great conversation, even better than I thought. Thank you for coming to L.A. Thanks for coming in studio. Congrats on the book.
Tavis.
Your daughter going to Spelman. Congrats
yes,
on that.
Yay.
Yeah, so it's a lot to be happy about around here.
Yes.
We'll call this Happy Land, at least while you're here. We'll see what the next hour brings, but it's Happy Land for the moment. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with 4 things you should know with BIN News. The Trump administration is rolling back over 2 dozen. Researchers in the UK and Ireland warn against giving slushies with glycerol to children under the age of 8. Glycerol, used to prevent freezing, caused 21 emergency cases in kids ages 2 to 7.